Hello, beautiful people. Right. So now I wanted to do a video, I guess sort of a follow-up on my first video, which was about us trying to come together as a community, unify and work together to get through these times that we're sort of suffering through, and a lot of people having trouble. A lot of people have lost their jobs. A lot of people are angry, disgruntled, frustrated, and they're gonna want to find somewhere to take someone somewhere to vent their angers and someone to take their anger out on. Um, and I think my worry is that it's gonna get directed at people and businesses who enforce the mandates. I don't want to make this about a COVID. I don't want to make this a vaccine video, so I probably shouldn't have said vaccine, but I don't want to make it into one. So what I do want to talk about is the importance of responsibility, why I think responsibility is something that so many people are afraid of, and I think that it might be due to that why so many businesses and so many people are unable to stand up and say no, um, why we're so reliant on authority and reliant on our government. So, what do we know about the word responsibility? Um, it essentially just means that we, you know, take responsibility for ourselves. So we are accountable. We accept if we accept we are responsible for something, we accept that we are accountable for our actions. We're accountable for our thoughts. We're accountable for our words. Um, yeah. So growing up, responsibility is painted as a negative. It's always painted negatively. It's not something that we do on purpose, but whenever, say, if something goes wrong at home and like you and your brother are fighting, you break a vase or you get punched in the nose, you have a blood nose, your mum comes along or your dad comes along and asks who's responsible for this, who's to blame, who's responsible, so that from a very young age, taking responsibility for something seems to have negative outcomes because you say, "Oh, it was me. I broke the vase." Then, "Oh well, you're grounded," or some kids got a smack on the ass, or but it usually had negatives. So, "Oh well, you broke that. We're taking away your allowance. We're taking away your TV time. Go to your room." So, generally speaking, when you took responsibility for something as a kid, you're punished for it. So that translates to the subconscious. That translates as responsibility associates with negative. I'll just let the cat in. Cat's gonna cry. Um, Come on. Damn cats can't take responsibility for themselves. Um, anyway, yeah. So responsibility equals bad. That's how that translates subconsciously, and then that drives our conscious actions. So that when bad things happen in the future in our lives, or when anything we're asked to take responsibility for something, a lot of the times that creates a lot of anxiety and fear. So we would rather somebody else take control and take command and take responsibility, because then, well, fuck, I'm not accountable, I'm not liable, I don't have to risk being in trouble. Now, what we see during this pandemic, and indeed now even with the vaccine mandates, is a lot of people who have made their choices, like myself. I've made a choice to be unvaccinated. Um, Now, as much as that choice may have been limited, and I don't think it's a fair choice, but I still made the choice, so I had to take responsibility for that. So I had to accept that I might lose my job. And I have to accept, other consequences that might come with that, which may be limiting my capacity to participate in society at the moment. Whether it's right or not, whether those rules are right, which they're not, emphatically they are wrong, they're immoral, but I still have to take responsibility for my actions. So, in saying that, I can't, if I go out and I start trouble with somebody because of that, because they won't let me, sit in their cafe and I get angry and I have a go at them, I'm now responsible for the way I've made them feel. Um, but I have to accept that I'm the one that's responsible for that. They didn't create that. They're responsible for their actions. So they're responsible for what they choose to do, and you are responsible for what you choose to do. You have to accept complete accountability for that. There can't be no. There's no sense in playing the blame game. So we don't need to play the blame game. What we need to do is, rather than looking constantly at problems, because that is what we are conditioned to do, we look and we focus on problems and we present problems. We're always presenting problems on social media platforms, wherever it may be, we present the problems. The reason we present problems more than we do solutions is because we don't want to accept responsibility for the solution of the problem necessarily. That might be too generalized, and I'm sorry if that offends some people, but it's about we don't want to accept responsibility for fixing the problems, but we present the problems and we talk about and we complain about the problems because the hope is that somebody will come along and take responsibility and fix it. So that's where, and I see a lot of this too, where we need to take action and we need to be out there. We need to be educating people. We need to be talking to people about this, not just in our own circles. So, you know, not just if we just have a group of unvaccinated or we have a group of conspiracy theorists like myself. So if I start thinking about a conspiracy, if I think about something like um, say you talked about 9/11, terrible, terrible tragedy that happened that, I believe was an inside job, for instance. I think the American government had a hidden agenda there. They wanted to start a war in the Middle East, or at least continue their warring in the Middle East, for whatever reason, power, control, money, you know, whatever else in my religion. But I say that. Now, if I just talk about that with other people who agree with me, I educate nobody because they're already on the same page. There's no point in me talking to all these people that already think that 9/11 was an inside job because you don't teach that. You don't teach anything about it to them because they're looking at the same shit you are. They're doing the same research you are. You need to be talking to the pro-vax people. You need to be talking to people who are enforcing the mandates, who are doing, and that is taking responsibility for your role. If you're going to take a stance against something, then be an educator and tell people why and just explain it to them in ways they can understand too, because we have to relate. You have to be relatable. You can't just up in arms screaming. You can't do fluffy bullshit either. Like, this is one thing that I personally, in say, spiritual circles, for instance, or occult circles, um, that I might find myself involved with. And what I find is a lot of fluffy bullshit because people don't want to talk about the nitty gritty. They don't want to accept that it's not all sunshine, roses, lollipops, and rainbows. It's not. Um, but yeah, taking responsibility for yourself, and that is, I think that's one of the first steps forward out of this situation that we find ourselves in, is to take responsibility, understand what that means, and that means taking accountability for everything you do. It means if you've taken this stance, you can't complain about it and whinge about it. Don't get sad about it or angry about it. Go like, right, I've made this choice. I'll take responsibility, and then you have to start looking at what resources you do have what connections you can make, and how you can make a difference. Because if you're doing this to stand against oppression, if you're doing this to stand for freedom and for liberty, which I think a lot of people are, then you need to be a voice for freedom and liberty, and you need to be talking to people who, I think a lot of people are on the fence. They're at that tipping point where it's either give up complete compliance, or maybe because we've got so many people who are now fully vaccinated, they've got their vaccine passports, they've done what they considered to be the thing they needed to do and what the government considers to be the right thing to do. They're the people we need on side with the unvaccinated, and the people that have decided to follow through, lose their jobs, and stand by their morals because they were in a position either that they could, or they've just sacrificed everything because they're set in their principles. I was one of those people set in my principles, unmoving. As it is, I'm fucking heavy. I weigh close to like 125 kilos, so it's just a joke. It's not a very good one, but I'm unmoving in my principles, and I will not change my principles. I will not change my values, and I will not sacrifice my morals for anyone. I won't do it for my partner even. And that's what upsets me most too. Is like we have to understand the stresses and strains that we might be putting onto the people we love as well. So we have to take responsibility for that. We have to assess that, and if that means you have to, don't feel like if you've been on the side of the fence that's unvaccinated, you've stood by your guns. If you decide to get the vaccine, and if you decide to do that, you haven't failed. I just want to make that clear too. There is no failure in that. You do what you need to do, but just because you get it doesn't mean you have to stop fighting. It doesn't mean you have to give up. And don't. What I'm urging people to do is, if you do get fully vaccinated, you do stand up against, this totalitarian bullshit government that we are being oppressed by. Don't lose your voice. Don't just stop speaking out because you've decided that you need to do that. Because it's once we stop speaking out, it's once we stop having a voice. And that is when we will essentially be conquered, because the less people that are speaking out, the more control that our governments feel they have over us. And yeah, so whatever you do, take responsibility, and make sure that you are being kind. Just be kind. Love always. That's always my message. Be kind. Love always. Take responsibility for yourself. Um, Again, love and peace profound, guys. Just take care. Cheers.